back on the podcast here.
Wow, this is fucking sharp as shit.
Wow, you just said two bad curse words.
Sharp as shit?
You said the F word before that. You're going to get me demonetized.
Oh.
Now I can't.
Fudge. Fudge, that is sharp as a poop.
You can't say those bad words. It's going to get me demonetized. And then you say, oh, fuck.
I don't even realize I used that word. It's so common.
Well, you should.
I'm glad I'm a dad.
Really, maybe you need
I'm
to
a
listen
good
to
father.
You need to listen to a 15-minute Friday about how to not curse so much, huh?
I probably need to listen to that pretty soon.
I'll have to do that one with somebody who's not you, so then you can listen. All right, ready to go?
Yeah, ready to go.
All right, well, we're up and running. So, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new 15-minute Friday here on the What You Don't Hear podcast. It's another Friday, and we are going to try and send you into the weekend with some maybe fun, maybe engaging, maybe good, positive points to think on or to go create with or to do some, I don't know, just in general cool things with. I am once again joined by Josh Emerick on this Friday. Josh.
Hey.
There you are.
Yeah.
Try to keep the curse words to a minimum.
I will do the best that I can.
In that, if you could. So, the topic.
Yeah, I kind of forgot what it was for a second.
Did you really?
Yeah, I remember now.
That's good. So now you know. You check the notes so you know what we're talking about. Hey, you should really hurry up and figure out what the topic is.
How to deal with impatience.
And that is a segue. That is what we call in the biz a segue.
Yeah.
Josh.
Not the ones you ride.
Not the ones you ride, but it could be, realistically.
Could be.
It could be. But that is a segue because, yes, we are talking about how to deal with impatience and finding the balance of impatience and, of course, finding then patience in that, especially in the creative world, because sometimes that is quite the difficult thing to navigate.
Yeah, it totally can be.
Excitement can take over. Hype can take over.
We make cool stuff all the time. Sometimes for other people. But let's be real. We all get excited when we make something new, when we challenge ourselves, when we achieve something that we didn't believe we can do.
Yes.
So it's normal to be excited.
It is.
But how do you control that excitement?
How do you control that? We're going to dig into that. We're going to talk about it on this 15-minute Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. 15 minutes on the clock. So I'm going to start us off here because I actually brought this subject up to you, right, when we were kind of going over what we wanted to do for a new 15. Being impatient is oddly enough, and this might be a surprise to you, being as, how many things we work on and how many things we keep locked away until the right time. I am a very impatient person. I am rather impatient, honestly, especially when it comes to things I'm excited about in the creative world, right? And over the years, I don't think I ever overreacted on that impatience, right? I never was I don't think, at least, I was ever that person who was like, I did a thing, I need to post it tonight, I got to get it out there tonight, like, here we go, whatever, right? I did understand, and we'll talk on this a little bit, but I did understand, playing the long game, planting those seeds, waiting for something until the time is right to really get it out there.
Where you get the maximum benefit out of it.
Right. But I'm not going to sit and say that honestly has been an easy process. It is so difficult sometimes to sit and just, not that everything has to be a secret, but when you've made something that you're proud of, made something that you're excited about, it is so hard to not just put it out into the world and share it with people. A great example, as a matter of fact, is this very podcast. The What You Don't Hear podcast. Folks, some of you might know this. Josh, of course, you know this. I recorded a handful of episodes, of the long-form episodes, well ahead of time before the podcast even existed in the public.
Yeah, and even before that, it was an idea for a long time.
Yes, and that was very hard to balance and keep that idea and not be impatient and not just, I record the first episode and I immediately get it done. Of course, I wanted to post it that night. But you have to understand, as we kind of move into our segue into our next thing here, you can't just work off the hype, and you can't just work just to get something finished to share it on social media.
Yeah. I
think social media plays a gigantic part in people's impatience nowadays. Right? Is that fair to say?
Totally. And I think where the impatience and where social media kind of plays the biggest role in a negative sense is when it's playing the game of like, I can't wait to just show off what I did, and it's not actually ready to be showed off.
Yeah.
Or you're showing it off just to flex a little bit, just to be like, I did something, and it may be negatively affecting you,
Right.
your client, and anyone associated with you, because
Right.
maybe you're violating something or violating trust even in your client of like, well, this was kind of under wraps. Maybe I
wasn't ready to talk about. I didn't want people to see this and know about it yet. Yeah.
You know, and like, I think that's where the discipline, having some patience, really does shine through the most. And, you know, like, I think you have this problem, and I kind of have the inverse of this problem.
Okay, yeah. And patience is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like the problem that and this is where I think you and I have balanced things out, where you've shown me a different side of things, is like, I was the perfectionist. I think it can be just as toxic to focus on getting something perfectly right.
Waiting too long.
Yeah. Trying to get something just right. And then you land yourself in never releasing anything. I think that's where social media is the good part. It kind of showed me, well, I need to showcase this to get it out there so that I get the next thing.
Right.
So while social media can be bad, all in all, with this whole impatience, with being creative, it can be good and bad. You just got to learn to balance it all out.
Yes.
And then balance yourself out.
Right.
Like, understand what is too much, like when is too early to share, when is the right time to share,
Right.
and making sure all parties are in agreement with all this.
Yeah. And I think it turns into that, you know, what are you really looking for? Are you looking for the instant gratification, or are you okay with the delayed gratification, the long-term success rather than the short-term gain, right? The immediate, like, all right, I posted that and I got 100 likes, and it doesn't always have to be about social media. That's just an easy example to give.
It's
but
the most common.
It is. It's the most, I think, relatable probably to talk about.
Everyone we're working with is ultimately putting this stuff on social media.
Right.
So the long-term game and the short term isn't a lot different for you. Like, the short term is, oh, I posted it, it's out there in the world, someone can like it now, blah, 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 blah. You wait some time and you share it, and suddenly it's the same effect. It's just coming out a little bit later. The long term, though, is you're in agreement with your client, who you're doing this work with, or whatever parties, and now you've built trust. So then you get to work again, you get a good recommendation, and it grows you. That, to me, is the biggest long-term game.
Yeah. And I think, you know, something along the lines of that it becomes, you know, when it's turning into work, right? Because let's say, you know, because real quick, it's an easy example, again, of the podcast of, you know, waiting it out. To kind of piggyback on what you said, I could have immediately posted it, but I waited a little bit, right? And that was just a long-term, you know, for myself. That wasn't for a client. That wasn't for anything. But what waiting did was allow me to plan everything that I needed to plan, to really think about everything, to make sure I had a solution for every problem I was running into. So that way it could launch and exist, not flawlessly, but without as many flaws as there could have been possibly, right? So I think that's kind of your personal win in playing the long term.
But you also knew, we're going to stay on this for a second.
Yeah.
You also knew what the purpose, why you wanted to create something.
Yeah.
So it was worth it to delay that so that you could line everything up so it got the right eyes on it, the right attention, and you were able to give it the right time with a plan.
Yeah.
So you weren't in reaction mode. We always talk about proactive versus reactive. So it's like, in this scenario, you were able to be very proactive, plan everything out, not be on the defense of like when things got off the tracks.
Yeah.
So that's another layer to that. For a personal side of things, like, have you asked yourself all the questions outside of it just existing? Or, you know, are you thinking about what potential problems or things you need to solve to make it exist the best way?
Right. And what's its purpose in existing? You know, what purpose does it serve when it does exist? And is everything around that creating a solid foundation for that to go out? You know, another great example, and I want to move on to some other points here, but another great example, I think, are the way that bands make their releases happen, right? They shoot a music video. How many times have we heard it of, as soon as we get it back, we can't wait to release it, or they just, you know, we don't hear them say that and they just do it. And then the release kind of falls flat and they don't make the most of it. There's no content. There's no campaign. There's no real promotion.
Or it wasn't utilized.
It wasn't utilized. There was just the excitement of, we have this thing done. We need to get it out there and post it. And then you fall short of what there could have been, right? You run into, it didn't really get that many views, or didn't really do anything, or, well, we posted about it once and then we didn't talk about it for a month because we didn't make a plan. You know, another easy example of something I think should be a lot, easier solved realistically. But it's another subject for another 15-minute Friday. But I think what a lot of this leads into is just understanding that growth, of course, takes time. And that sounds so cliche and so simple to say. But I think it's easy to forget when you're excited, right? It's easy. Yeah. It's easy to forget when you're in that process of wanting to share something again, especially when you're proud of it, right? When there's a pride and stuff with that excitement that comes with it. It's not just, we're not going to harp on the social media thing and say that everybody's hungry for likes. There is a certain just, I can't wait for the world to see this, right? Yeah. I've been in that boat. We have both been in that boat so many times where we sit for months and months on something that we can't wait to show, the world. There's been examples of that even between us. There's been things that I have been so excited to show you, but I don't want to show you until I know it's really in its final form or almost in its final form, so you can truly feel what it's supposed to be. Right. Yeah. And that also feeds into, getting work. I think you sort of mentioned this earlier, of, not getting overzealous when it comes to sharing your work or your portfolio or whatever it may be, and how that can lead into maybe a little bit of a rocky road or a rough foundation with a possible client or with a possible, any sort of job that you can get. It's sort of the thing of, trying to play and beat level 10 with level 2's power-ups and tools. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's not getting ahead of you.
Don't rush to get there too much.
Exactly. Don't rush to get there, and making sure that you're not getting ahead of yourself.
And I guess where I deal with impatience the most is in business, not necessarily in projects.
Okay, yeah.
For me, I'm focused on team building, on growing my team, growing my company. Sometimes it's numbers, sometimes it's the type of projects we're getting of my real desire is to do these types of projects.
Yeah.
And I'm we're not quite there yet.
Right.
But I'm very mission focused on what incremental thing can I do each project that allows us to get a little closer to that.
Yeah.
I love high-end pop and hip-hop videos that have tons of production value. Way more high-end than what we're getting to do right now.
Right.
So when can I find a project and when can I start to add that extra layer of this is something I would see in those high-end things. We don't have the full budget to do that. But here's my selfish little thing that's this is what I want to do to kind of prove I'm getting a little bit closer to that layer. And a layer further is why am I doing that? Because I want to get my team up to that point too. So getting my team up to that point, I can get frustrated and be my people aren't doing good enough. They aren't doing this well enough. Am I giving them enough information? Am I giving them enough, tools, the right resources, the right communication, the right, self-talk for them to be able to do that? Am I delegating well enough? Am I articulating my points well enough?
Are you allowing them to grow?
Exactly.
That's really what it is. And
not getting so I wish we were there right now. I wish our business was here right now.
Tunnel vision thing, right? Of getting one track mind, looking at only the thing that you want at the end and not paying attention to the steps you need to get there, right? Of learning how to, reverse engineer almost, see the big goal in mind and then understanding that it takes a plan and steps and tiny steps to get there. I think that, again, like a lot of the subjects we talk about here on the 15-Minute Fridays or on the podcast in general, we weren't always, we're not experts in this, but we for sure, didn't always have this knowledge as we sit here and look all cool on a podcast.
With business, I used to be frustrated all the time with people. And the reality is I wasn't giving them the information or the things to grow.
Yes.
I was my own problem.
And I think something that we've identified that old us used to do is the classic explanation of don't be busy, be productive, and how there's a difference in that. So talk on that real quick of maybe how use us as the example maybe.
That's exactly such a good point. We used to go through this phase where we do 3 to 6 months of work where we just get in our groove and we just be making. We'd be like, yeah, we got work. We got tons of work. We're doing all this work. And then we'd come around 3-6 months and we'd look back on our work and we'd be like, well, maybe this is the next layer forward. But it would take us 3 to 6 months to actually look back at what we were doing and realize we did a lot of the same things over and over.
So we were just in go mode.
Today, go mode is exactly what it was. You know, the busy bee mentality of then we look at okay, where do we take the business next? And it would take us 3 to 6 months to make these course corrections. And don't get me wrong, if we went back, we'd probably still do it that way. because then we were just excited to get work and be busy.
It's a part of the
for
growth.
that amount of time.
Part of the growth.
Today, though, when we do a project, I'm like, how do we differentiate? How do we level up per project? It's not as big of level ups. Like, I think back then, it would like be a leap and bound of like a new piece of equipment, or it would be like, let's add on a team member, which was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's stretch our rental budgets more. And those were always like scary because we didn't know how to use those things. Today, it's a lot more incremental of like, how do we like prep our paperwork? How do we like add more layers to our crew? Maybe that's a production call. Maybe that's typing up a more thorough, you know, like call sheet, or like doing more prep on like our locations.
Right. And it's so a lot of it just comes down to, you know, understanding that, again, you know, take that time to make sure you're growing. Understand that there's
incremental growth.
Yes, the incremental growth. Don't worry about the instant gratification. Be okay with that delayed gratification because, you know, you can still get those kind of short-term wins that can lead to the eventual big win, right? But it's all a part of like understanding that process of growth is really what it takes. There is a journey there. If I can, I'll butcher the quote, but if I can pull an example from somebody who we are both very fond of from a show called Lost, and I don't know if you remember this, but it's a quote by our boy John Locke, right? And it's always actually stuck with me. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's something that I love from the show. And he was explaining the process of like a moth and turning into a butterfly, and it goes in its cocoon and all this sort of stuff, right? So he was explaining that, you know, while it's in its cocoon, yes, he could speed up the process and get it out of its cocoon quicker, right? So it's out. So he could go and he could take his knife and he could cut open the cocoon and help it get out, because, you know, it's got to struggle to get out of the cocoon, right? It's a part of the growth. He could help free it, but then when it gets out, it would be too weak to survive. It wouldn't be ready to get out because it did not go through its actual growth. It didn't go through its actual struggle that was needed to get it to where it needed to go, right? To get free of that cocoon and fly away, right? So a bunch of artsy examples there that I think are mirroring a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, right? It's understanding that your growth is a part of the process. You have to take time to take those steps. Understand, make a plan, make a to-do list, break it down, reverse engineer. Don't worry about, again, jumping to level 10 when you should be at level 2, because it's okay to be at level 2. Because maybe you are not ready to be at level 10. Maybe you are not ready just yet to break through that cocoon and try and fly away.
Accepting and understanding that those struggles are ahead of you also grants you a lot of freedom.
Yes.
You know, like this does pertain to impatience. And I think one of the biggest things around impatience is like people want to win. And it's like the wins don't really actually grow you that much. The losses suck. They hurt. But that is part of the struggle. And when you learn those lessons and when you start to reframe your mind into every heartache, every pain point is actually a lesson that I'm going to grow from. I'm not going to make that mistake again, or I'm going to make that mistake less the next time.
Right.
You get a little bit stronger each time, and you get a little bit more resistance, you build more patience, and you start to understand how to enjoy that journey.
Yes, and that, I think, is the all-encompassing thing that we can kind of ball all this up with in our own cocoon, if you will. Man, I'm just riding these segues this episode. We can kind of ball all that up in one point of learning to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. Right?
Expect these things to go wrong. Like, expect you to get excited and to fudge this up.
Thank you for using fudge, and that's the sponsors will like that. No, but it really is. It really comes down to enjoying the process. And folks, don't get me wrong. That is a difficult thing to learn how to do. Right? But that is a part of the discipline of learning true patience, is understanding that you're on your journey, right? And of course, if you keep working and chipping away, you're going to eventually reach your goals. But it's understanding that everything that happens to you along the way, good or bad, is all part of the journey. And the more, I think you said, you know, something along the lines earlier, is when you can learn to accept all that, is when you can just learn to enjoy those things and take them. And there's a certain freedom that comes with that.
It doesn't sting as much.
Yes, when you're not holding yourself to that, like, I have to have this instant gratification, I have to have this instant win. When you can sit back and enjoy the process, that is where you can really gain that real freedom to truly probably grow even more. And maybe, just maybe, it might help you grow a little bit quicker.
And if we take this just even another step further, we all want to be happy. let's play the happiness game, not the instant gratification game.
Mm-hmm.
So I like cookies. If I eat a cookie, I'm usually pretty happy. But if I eat 20 cookies, I start to feel pretty dang sick.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take this back to the social media thing. If you continue to do the same thing and share and look for the instant gratification and you're just trying to put things out over and over, eventually that might collapse on you and you might get exhausted. You might get worn out. You might lose all your clients. You might not see the results that you want to see from what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're very unhappy. You're feeling sick.
Right.
So if we play the long-term game, if we understand that the delayed gratification of something, waiting for that cookie at the end of the hard-earned cooked meal,
Yes.
then we might enjoy that cookie a little bit more because we understand that it's the reward of waiting.
Yes. And sometimes when you get too much of what you perceive as a good thing, possibly too quick, that can quickly take a turn into possibly a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there it is, folks. I think we covered a lot of good ground there. That might have been one of my favorite 15-minute Fridays that we've done.
It's a little different.
That was, yeah.
It's a little different.
A little different. I got to quote John Locke. You got to talk about cookies.
That was cool, actually. Like, and I had my I was like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, I remember those things. I named my son after him. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So,
I'm a dad. I can't cuss.
If anybody wants to talk about impatience or talk about how to be a little bit more patient or talk about Lost, hey, if you want to talk about Lost, for sure, talk to one of us or both of us because we'd be absolute big fans. But if you took anything away from this 15-Minute Friday, as always, make sure to share it around the internet. The easiest way is to share it in your Instagram story, screenshot this, throw it up in your story, tag the podcast at WYDHpod, tag me so I can repost it at Who's Ross Tyson. Josh, where can they find you on the internet?
Instagram at JM Emerick, EMERICK.
So yes, as always, we hope you took something good away from this. And honestly, hopefully you unlocked a little bit of patience just within this 15-Minute Friday, which is that hypocritical of us to talk about patience but cramming it all within 15 to 20 minutes in an episode?
It might be.
Are we hypocrites?
I think we are.
I hope not. No hypocritical stuff here on the podcast, folks. But hey, as always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Doing a quick test here just to make sure.
Hey, I'm Josh.